Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Shootout. I'm Anthony Corby, joined alongside Sean Chornabroff. I am filling in for Eric Johnson today, so Sean, welcome back. We have some business to take care of first.
We do. We do have some business to take care of. Tell me your business, by the way, Tony.
The NCAA, I believe you just mentioned that all March Madness games will be played without fans. Do you want to elaborate more on that?
Yes, so I haven't had a chance to read the full statement, but it seems to be that it's going to be no fans. It's going to be players, coaches, essential personnel, your trainers, maybe announcers, things like that. And it's not something I like, but it's something I understand, and the NCAA made the right choice. You can't. There's coronavirus going around everywhere. I don't even know the proper CODV something 19, but it's just you cannot be putting a bunch of fans having this thing passed around like crazy. Considering when it's not symptomatic usually among younger kids, so when you have college age kids who might have it but aren't symptomatic, therefore haven't gotten tested, and the death rate is around 8% of people among 70 years old. And you might have 10 or more people above 70 years old, the likelihood is mathematically that one of them will pass away. That's a liability for the NCAA, and more importantly, that's someone's life who is lost. That's someone's father or mother, someone's kid maybe. That's someone important. That's someone important to somebody else's life. And the NCAA, for once in their life, is doing the responsible thing, even though it's probably for their own benefit because they know they're losing money, but they're just trying to avoid a lawsuit. They're the NCAA. But for once in its history, they're doing the responsible thing, and they're looking at the player, the family, the average person first before their bottom line.
Yeah, and I feel like you could go into like different topics. You could go off on tangents about how the virus isn't that severe, about how the media is overplaying it. But at the same time, there's a 4% fatality rate, the last I checked, which is a lot higher than that of the flu. There aren't as many cases reported as the flu right now. But I feel like more sports leagues around the world, as they continue to make precautions. I mean, they've already done something similar with Italy in soccer.
They shut down
even think
the
that
league.
I was going to say, I don't think that they're even playing anymore. But there's more talk about how, even in the U.S., there are sporting events set, professional sports that might be played without fans.
The Warriors actually just said that they're doing that.
Wow,
because
really?
the governor of California, I believe, said that no gatherings over 1,000 people, and the Warriors are just playing without fans for the near future. So yeah, you're gonna have Steph Curry, former MVP, trying to light it up at home with no one watching him.
Yeah, exactly.
You might have a couple TV cameras.
Yeah, I was looking. Steve Dangle said this morning on his little podcast or channel or whatever it is he was talking on. He was talking about, if the Leafs win the Cup this year, nobody would get to see it because it'd be in an empty arena, and it'd be the first time in like 50 years that they'd won a Cup.
Exactly. That's the type of thing we're looking at. Like, imagine going to a school. Like, let's just say Ryder gets to the tournament, right?
Yeah.
We're in the studio. Let's just say Ryder gets to the tournament. Imagine them going on a Cinderella run, but we can't see it. We don't even have the opportunity to go.
Yeah.
Like, I think they're still broadcasting, but we don't even get the opportunity to go. Imagine that.
Yeah, I think that after March Madness, there are probably going to be a lot more sporting events shutting down because I feel like we're going to have March Madness one way or the other because this is the only time of year when the NCAA basketball or NCAA in general is relevant, except for like the 2 weeks when the college football playoffs are going on. So after that, I feel like we might see entire leagues shutting down. We might see the NHL just shut down entirely because that's
a condensed space.
Yeah, and that's like that. That's you have teams from Canada and the U.S. involved in that. The NBA, they're already taking precautions. I know there was a conference meeting earlier today about relocating teams from heavily impacted areas. That was a possibility. I don't know what exactly came out of that, but they were having some conference call today about that. It's probably already outdated by the time this goes up.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's
I believe the Mariners are not playing at home, if I'm correct.
Wow.
And I believe other teams are looking into it. Yeah, they're in Seattle. It's crazy what this virus is doing. It's not just the NCAA. It's going everywhere. I believe this Seattle Sounders just postponed a game on the 21st.
Wow.
Because it's a highly impacted area. And honestly, I think DC's next. Not DC, Boston, my bad. Boston might be next because Massachusetts has a huge rate of cases. So I'm not trying to send everyone to Celtics games, New England Revolution games, whatever else. When the Red Sox start up the season, we know how crazy those fans get. They're as passionate as they could get about the Red Sox. So I think it wouldn't shock me if that was next. I'm not going to Massachusetts anytime soon. Screw that. I'd rather sit in my home and comfortably watch an empty game than try to go to one.
Well, to be fair, I wouldn't go to Massachusetts anyway.
No, I do never
Especially Boston.
Yeah, I would never set foot in that state.
Especially now.
But now you've given me an actual reason instead of me just saying, hey, I hate Boston.
Yeah, exactly. Well, transitioning to, based on the topic of the NBA and relocating teams, we're going to be talking a bit today about expansion teams and moving to new cities in the MLS. So right now, we have 4 new expansion teams coming into the MLS in the coming years. St. Louis is one of them. Austin. Who are the other 2? I forget.
I honestly can't remember off the top of my head.
I just saw it, Sacramento's one.
Sacramento.
So this brings up the topic. A lot of MLS fans, every time we hear about this expansion team, take to social media and they start talking about the prospect of promotion and relegation. There are 35 teams in the USL right now. So what are your thoughts on promotion and relegation in the MLS?
I don't think you could do it. I honestly don't think it's plausible. First off, MLS teams have a buy-in fee. They put all of this money, and USL teams don't. USL teams, the buy-in fee is not as much as it is. And let's not forget, half these USL teams are minor league teams. So unless you segregate is probably not a good word, but you separate the USL teams that are minor league teams and put them in a separate league, like you have USL League 1 and the USL Championship.
Yeah.
So unless you make the USL League 1 and allow USL League 1 to maybe be for like Red Bulls 2, the Sounders, Luton United, all those teams, and then you make the regular USL for all the teams that are not related to an MLS team or affiliated, then you could do it. But then you need to have all those teams pay the differential of the buyout fee, which many of these franchises don't have the revenue to do. So I don't think it's plausible from that standpoint. Do I love the idea? Yes, but there's a buy-in fee. There's a lot of financial obligations. And honestly, I would love see the way it affects the transfer market, but it also affects the super draft.
Yeah.
That's the big component nobody is talking about. We have the MLS Super Draft every year, and if you have the number 1 pick in the Super Draft from being in last place, do you really think that dude's going to want to sign with you? He's the number 1 pick if he's playing in the USL?
Yeah.
So from that perspective, it also takes away from the value of the Super Draft. And people always talk about, they want the relegation because it makes the fight for last place fun, more effective. The MLS needs to do that by promoting their Super Draft better and make it an NFL draft type thing. It's why people are interested in the 1-15 Bengals near the end of the season. Just like, oh, they're going to go get Joe Burrow. Well, the MLS should do a better job of, NCAA, MLS should do a better job of promoting these college prospects and be like, oh crap, you could go get Robbie Rogers, who was already putting together a nice role for Inter Miami in their first 2 games. That's where the crucial is. I don't think promotion relegation is necessary. You should have the race for Robbie and other campaigns like this. So that at that point, it becomes more relevant. But I think unless you want to get rid of the Super Draft altogether, at which point you're going to have elite prospects signing for like the Atlanta United and LAFC every year, and it's going to be just constant eras of domination, similar to what we saw the LA Galaxy have when they had Donovan and Beckham. So on paper, it's a nice idea, but when you look deeply into the idea, I am not a fan of a promotion relegation system in the U.S.
Here's the thing. The problem with a lot of the USL teams is that there is a massive difference, and this is in League One and the Championship, in attendance. So, expansion teams in the USL, like New Mexico, have succeeded so far because they've managed to rile up a fan base. But last season, I had season tickets for the Philadelphia Union, and their minor league team, the Bethlehem Steel, the Bethlehem Steel at the time, were talking about relocating. They were playing some of their games on college campuses in like LaSalle. And most of their games last year, however, were at Talon Energy Stadium. And I remember there was one day where there was a doubleheader, and the Union played first, and there was pretty much a sellout stadium, which is rare for the Union to begin with. And then the second game was the Bethlehem Steel game, and everybody left. And that was the case for most of the season in terms of attendance. There were probably 400 people there maximum on a good day. There were just entire empty rows. I was front row for some of the matches, and I had the whole row to myself at like as close to the middle of the pitch as you could get without having to pay for a separate ticket. The problem is these teams are integrated with other teams that are trying to become successful that are independent franchises
Yeah.
like New Mexico and like Sacramento.
So, totally agree.
If you do have promotion relegation, you need a separate league. I like the idea of promotion relegation in that sense because then you can have teams in lower levels that are competing to get to the MLS and higher levels. And it also gives you the problem with professional sports in the United States, why a lot of people laugh at us, is because the concept of tanking is fairly recent and it's become more and more prevalent recently. I mean, we all saw the Miami Dolphins at the beginning of last season before they went on that run at the end of the season when they went 5-4. They were deliberately tanking for the first pick in the draft, and there was nothing that was going to stop them except themselves in the end. And the problem is that you are either in one of these markets now, and you can see it even in the NBA. Like the Warriors right now are tanking. They've had injuries too, and that's contributed to it. But what a lot of people don't...
I don't believe the Warriors are tanking. I mean, I get the thought that were they sellers at the deadline, yes, but they brought in Andrew Wiggins, so they didn't just go draft picks, and they also activated Steph Curry. If you're tanking, you don't activate Steph.
Okay, maybe the Warriors isn't the best example. Probably a better example would be the Sixers, the old Sixers when they were tanking.
That is the golden example.
They deliberately tried to lose, and a lot of fans stopped watching the Sixers at that point because they weren't trying to win, and now a lot of them are back.
Yeah.
But these weren't like diehard fans in the era when they weren't winning anything, and this is probably been the case with Philly sports a lot, with the Phillies too. And that's a problem because then people don't want to watch these teams because these teams, these organizations don't want to win. So if you put a passion, if you put like a drive to keep winning, the problem is the MLS has too many teams right now. And we separate it based on Eastern and Western Conference because the United States is big. But what's different from the United States than from the United Kingdom and the English Premier League is that in the United States, the leagues are, or the teams are owned and operated to keep participating in the same league. So the giants, like the Galaxy and, well, what's becoming NYCFC, they're always going to want to stay in the league, so they're going to vote against us, and they're going to keep going out to buy these players.
Yeah.
And it's similar to the EPL, but what would put them over the top is if you kept on driving them to win, if you kept on driving them to want to get these players from overseas, like the Galaxy have done. I mean, they just got Chicharito. It would just light a fire underneath teams that haven't succeeded so far. So you'd see more teams like the Union and DC and the Red Bulls. They would make concerted efforts, and even like other small market teams like Orlando, they would make concerted efforts to get these overseas players. So it would make the MLS more fascinating in that sense.
Yes, but here's what would end up happening. Your LA Galaxy, your NYCFCs, you would eventually see a list of 5 or 6 teams that become your Manchester United, your Man Cities.
Yeah.
That's what ends up happening. Then your Philadelphia Union becomes Leeds United. Leeds United won a championships in the 90s. You just said, I believe you were talking about them earlier. You said they hadn't won a cup in 50 years with Steve Dangle. I think that's the team you said.
Oh, the Leafs, yeah.
Oh, Leafs. My bad. I thought you said the Leeds. I don't know why. No, that explains why that statement made no sense to me. But if they won a championship in 95, they have not seen the light of the Premier League in 10 or 15 years. You would see these great teams like FC Dallas, maybe, who knows, because they build a lot through their academy. And then all of a sudden it starts hurting the academy because you have to constantly rebuy players to where you see England's national team suffering because it's so hard for teams to stay up because of the influence of foreign money. So now you're not seeing as many academy prospects go through. Now there's nothing Americans care about more than their national team. It goes national team, then club. So I think at that point, if you want to keep having this great influence, I like the league the way it is. And you want to know what makes the MLS so special compared to any other league? Parity. No other league has parity. Oh my god, I'm sorry, I'm getting over a cough, and I don't have the coronavirus, I swear. I have matched none of the symptoms.
Oh, we gotta disinfect the studio now.
But the EPL, you could predict Man City, Man United, Liverpool, blah, 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 every year. Serie A, Juventus, Napoli, whoever. Germany, it's Bayern Munich. France, it's becoming PSG. Maybe if you have a Monaco run here and there. The MLS is a crapshoot every year. you really do have a playoff system that could produce any winner, and that's what makes this league special, and it's why it's actually somewhat growing in overseas nations.
To an extent, but at the same time, you do kind of see the same teams dominating over and over now, based on their attendance and based on their popularity. Like the Galaxy, they were able to consistently dominate in the last decade and previous, or
well, that's because I believe they had
mostly in the 2000s.
They had and David Beckham was still more than good enough to be an elite player in Europe, and Landon Donovan. I believe that's just based off market share, but as the league grows, I think that'll change.
But teams like Atlanta have continued to dominate. My point is that it's not.
And where is United? Where did Atlanta do this? Atlanta completely did a deconstruction of their roster. Besides Almiron, all those guys have left. That's the parity.
Left the year before, though.
Yeah, but they got rid of a good amount of their roster, and that's the beauty of the MLS. In other leagues, Josef Martina, if Martinez was playing for Manchester United, they would have bought a new striker in January. That's not how that works in the MLS, and I think that's what makes the league so great. Yes, you see teams dominate a lot of the time, but it's because it's new, exciting, but you do see a lot of parity. You do see, if you go, Colorado Rapids won a championship like 5 years ago, and I don't think they've sniffed it since.
Yeah.
I believe the Columbus Crew almost won the championship the same year. Federico Higuain's one of the greatest players in MLS history and hasn't been able to sniff a ring because he's been loyal to that franchise. I think that's what makes the MLS special, parity. The Red Bulls can win the Supporters' Shield but not get the overall prize, and that's something different in any other league.
Well, I like the playoffs. I mean, I don't like the way the MLS does it, but I like the playoffs.
Okay, so if you do promotion-relegation...
Well, here's the thing. With promotion-relegation, the problem is that it's Eastern and Western conferences.
Yes.
That's how we've divided it. So the question would be, do we pick the USL Eastern and Western champion? My main point is that it's not going to be much different than it is now. You're still going to see similar teams dominating. I mean, the Philadelphia Union, if I were to make a comparison to what they did this past season to what other teams in the United Kingdom, for example, have done previously, like the Union or the Leicester City. It's rare, but most of the teams that come to dominate in the MLS dominate for many years on end. The Colorado Rapids are an example of that not working out, but they still have Tim Howard, and they were still able to...
Yeah, and guys like Tim Howard bring attendance, but where was Toronto before they got Bradley and Altidore?
They were not good, to say the
That's
least.
the example of what the MLS can do. You can turn it over in one season.
But Toronto's a big market.
Is it in the MLS? It really wasn't. It was a big overall market, but it's a hockey city.
That's a whole different problem. That Toronto is like their stadium.
The Sounders were good for most of their existence, but then Dempsey brought them to another level. You can make it's like any other sport. You can build a champion. It's hard. FC Dallas has built a consistent contender through their academy.
And that's
something that the
large market as well. And I agree with we need to reform the academies.
Yes, and that's
because what we have affiliations. My problem is that the MLS is trying to be a lot too much like the MLB in their minor league sense. They're trying to create these leagues. There are probably 5 stages by now in minor leagues. I mean, you have the PDL, you have the USL League 1, League 2, the championship. There's way too many leagues, and if we condense these leagues, if we separate some of these leagues into affiliates, or we just form them into academies, or combine them with academies, then that can serve as their, it would be a lot like what they have in the EPL. Yeah. But the system of having every team that's a minor league team in one group is a problem, because then you have some of these teams that aren't competing for anything except producing products for their main teams, competing with independent teams that actually care.
Which is why I think you should separate the minor league teams into one league, where it's a bunch of guys competing for MLS time against guys who are really just competing for USL time. So you could have the teams that are focusing on the same common goal together. I think would be a good solution. But the PDL, how I've always thought of the PDL, is really where college kids play in their off season, to be honest. Yeah. So I don't even put that. It's a system of development, but it's not really affiliated. But the issue with the USL, usually they have it's like some teams have affiliates in USL League 1 and some have them in the championship. And that's my biggest issue. I think they should just all be together because it is 2 different levels of competition.
Well, my thing is that after you combine these leagues and there needs to be some sort of inspiration for these teams that are looking for these markets to not affiliate with bigger teams. And the only way that you can do that is if you promise them something in the end. And like a championship won't do it, in my opinion. I think if you make it so that they can be promoted if they win to the MLS, and then you downgrade teams that don't have these big markets. Like right now, Toronto FC's minor league team has an attendance of like 700 a game.
Yeah.
That's right. Or I think there was a number from a few years ago. It was like they had 100 fans at a game, and I remember seeing the game on YouTube, and there was a lot wrong with it. I mean, the camera was facing the sun, but like if you put them in another league, which you should, and you put the teams that want to be promoted in a separate league, then the inspiration for those teams to be promoted is higher, and those teams sometimes carry bigger markets with them. Like New Mexico, I think, could do a better job in the MLS than teams like the Union, right? I mean, the Union kind of gained a little over the past year, but previously, no one in Philly cared about the Union. And I as a Union fan myself, I was almost favoring the idea of relegation in 2017 because I believe there were far better markets out there than Philadelphia.
Yeah, so I think you've seen the growth because, number one, the Union have gotten more talented, and they have young talent to be excited about.
Yeah.
So there's one thing I like about this thing that nobody's talking about. All these USL teams do have academies too. Like I'm pretty sure New Mexico has an academy, Memphis has an academy. But when these players get better, they just go off to an MLS development academy. So through this promotion relegation idea, you will see talent getting developed through these New Mexico teams that will eventually go to the MLS and all that kind of stuff. It would keep players within their local academies instead of having to drive an hour and a half, all that kind of stuff. And maybe moving out. It would create more homegrown signings. That's the good part of the idea. The thing I go back to, again, is the money aspect. The buy-in fee for the MLS, I believe, is $30 million. Some teams don't have the resources. Yeah. That's just facts. So you cannot be telling me that a team, Austin spent $30 million, but New Mexico spent like $5 million to buy into the USL, can say, after 1 year where Austin, who is a new team, gets kicked out of the MLS because it's just hard to build a new team from day one. They get kicked out, and then New Mexico, who never had to pay a dime, gets to go up to the MLS.
Well, I think that's a problem too, is that there is this buy-in fee because we've kind of Americanized soccer in a sense.
I do like the fact that's Americanized.
If you eliminate the buy-in fee, the problem is that the USL is a separate branch from the MLS right now. So if the MLS were to buy out the USL, then it would become more plausible. But they also have to get rid of this buy-in fee.
And I also want to say, why do people have a problem with soccer being Americanized?
Oh, I don't have a problem with it.
I'm not saying you specifically, but people always go like, oh, the MLS needs to get better. It needs to get more talent. I'm like, why can't the MLS be a feeder league? Brazil's not trying to bring in all these great talents from overseas, and it allows their great talents to develop. Why do we have players who are 19, 20 years old who could maybe contribute to our national team, who could be one of your guys for the next 15 years, having to get loaned down for the USL just so you could sign some random guy from Norway that we've never heard of that you market as your DP signing, but I don't know who the hell he is, and you're not going to come above 6 in the conference anyway.
Yeah.
So why do you care? Like, let that 19-year-old kid develop. The Red Bulls just signed a left back from French League 2 today. You know who was starting for them? Patrick Seagrass, their first-round pick. The backup was a 17-year-old homegrown signing. I want to see those two guys develop more than I want to see some damn dude from League 2 of France who has not been capped by the French team since he's a U18 and he's 23 now.
Yeah, and I think that partially does come from the
that is my issue with soccer being Americanized, that we like these overseas product instead of appreciating what's at home nowadays.
Exactly.
Because I do think the academies are producing lots of talent. You see with Tyler Adams. Ulysses Lanas is doing some great things overseas. A guy just got an extension at PSV. You saw AC Milan almost bought the kid from Wigan. I can't remember the left, Anthony Robinson. So I do think you are seeing some great talents being produced. Sergino Dest is doing some great things at Ajax. So you do see great talents being produced.
Yeah, and I
believe in them.
I think that there does still need to be reform with the because I
think it's far from perfect system.
There are a limited amount of international spots right now.
Yes,
and I think that needs to be decreased more. I don't have a problem with Americanizing the sport.
I like the idea.
Aspects
I like the salary cap idea.
Worked with, I like the salary cap idea.
It's too, different.
Like European leagues, I feel like there's some stuff that can still be attributed, like a promotion relegation system, to the MLS. Yeah. But generally, we watch the MLS because it's unique. Mm-hmm. So I agree to the extent that we need to keep the American talent here and maybe even guys like Christian Pulisic would stay over here if they had more of a reason to stay over here and dominate.
Yeah,
But
there's no reason the MLS can't be a feeder league for talents abroad. Like you look at the Olympic team. There's 15 guys who I believe are on MLS rosters. But I believe the other 8 guys, 6 or 7 of the other 8, also came through MLS academies before getting overseas. So, yeah, you have guys who could sign at homegrown signings at 17 years old who won't contribute till they're 20. That's great. I trust that you know how to develop their guys. But I do want to say, since we are talking about the USL, I think every MLS team should be required to have a USL affiliate.
The way it's in now, I would agree.
Because
the problem with... I mean, if... Again... It would require separation of leagues for the promotion and relegation system to actually take place. But if all the MLS teams combine or affiliate themselves with a USL team, it would have to be the same league. Yeah. I feel like that would be the only condition.
And I don't have an issue with that. I think if it comes down to a money thing, I feel like the differential in value between a USL league and a USL championship, they're all on ESPN Plus, all the same TV deals, so that's not my issue at all. And I think if the MLS talked to the USL about this, I don't think it would be too much of an issue. I think they'd understand it. It honestly makes these games easier to market. A New York Red Bulls 2 versus New Mexico is a lot harder. I feel like a lot harder to market to the average soccer fan who might not understand the value of New Mexico than New York Red Bulls 2 versus Toronto, where you could look at it like a minor league baseball ticket and go, oh, damn, those are 2 division rivals at the MLB level. Like, it's easier to market, in my opinion. But... I just think you need to have the talent in the same place. It's just where it needs to go. It's just I don't have an issue with it being I don't have an issue with it being Americanized in any way. I like the way most of these things are done. But it's just there are things that need to be changed. I do like the idea of promotion relegation, but like I said, every USL team needs to have an affiliate. Like the Chicago Fire have been on a homegrown signing spree. It's a bunch of 16, 17-year-old kids. A lot of people aren't out of high school.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have a USL affiliate. I don't believe they do, in fact. I don't believe there's a Chicago Fire, too.
I think what needs to happen is they don't necessarily need... I mean, the way that things are now, I agree. But I think that if you were to reform the USL and you were to reform minor leagues, that there should be a requirement for an academy to create more unity with the actual team.
Yes.
So like they have in Europe,
well,
how they develop, because they have U23s in Europe.
Yeah. And if you look at most of these teams' USL squads, a lot of them are their younger players.
Yeah.
And that's basically what it has become. Because when Paul Pogba rehabs, or a lot of these good players rehab, they'll play 90 minutes at the U23s for a couple weeks. And then... they'll go back into whatever league. And I believe that's exactly what the USL should be. It should be the American version of the Premier League too.
Yeah,
I totally agree with that.
The English Championship.
Exactly. But that's totally what it should be. It should be about developing this younger talent, and there's no reason why it can't be. But we do see these 16, 17-year-old high school kids who are giving up full ride college scholarships to sign with professional teams. And they don't got much of a plan. They just don't want them going off to college so they could eventually enter the super draft because they think there might be something there.
And the super draft has honestly become useless in recent years anyway.
I actually think this year might be the rebirth of it. The top 3 picks have all made significant contributions. I believe we've seen people in the teens. It's just, and why I think it's become so useless is over the foreign signings.
Yeah.
Because these players don't get the development. But that's what the USL could do.
Of academies too. Is that because you have
the homegrown
academies
signings.
And you have your affiliates, so those are going to be the guys you promote.
Yes.
So you can just trade all your picks away for another international roster spot, and then sign somebody from overseas to be in that international roster. It's just a mess.
It is a mess, and there needs to be a better way to do that. I don't have an issue with doing the whole academy thing. I think academies, eventually you sign the professional deal, you might play some time in the USL before getting promoted. As long as you can tell me that you have that this guy is having a professional level contract, will get professional level training and a chance at professional minutes, even if it's at the USL, and he's 17, 18 years old, he's going to be making money, he's going to be making a decent wage, no issue with it. And then you have guys 21 out of college and they're all competing for the same thing. I think it's a bunch of youngsters trying to prove themselves. I think it breeds a good environment if done correctly, and I don't think it's that hard to do it correctly. But my issue is that a lot of these kids breed this competitiveness, and the Red Bulls are an example of this. They just go and they sign someone from overseas. They actually have the Red Bulls right back week 1 was a guy they signed from overseas because they decided the right back was better, and that guy went out. And I'm all for survival of the fittest, but like you need to have a chance for your talent to push through. Alex Mule has been a contributor for years, and he's playing at the USL again for the Red Bulls. That's just the example that comes to my head because I'm a diehard Red Bulls fan.
Yeah.
But if you look at who the Red Bulls have, it's a lot of homegrown guys, or guys who have been in the organization for a few years, have really improved. It's a lot of your Florentine Vlos, but then you also have Kaku, who's a fantastic player, but he's taken someone's spot. Danny Royer's taken someone's spot. They play similar roles. You have a lot of these homegrown guys, but they let Kamara Lawrence go, who I believe was an overseas signing, this offseason to go to Anderlecht. Then they replace him with 2 homegrown guys, a first-round pick and a 17-year-old, like I said before. But then I actually have not been unimpressed with Seagrass for someone who was the 10th pick, which in the USL seems kind of low. Yeah. But in every other sport, that's someone who's still expected to contribute, which is another issue with the MLS draft. It's not lack of talent in college soccer, in my opinion. It's lack of teams willing to give their talent a chance.
Yeah.
So I think these teams need to just do a better job of putting their talent on the field instead of spending $4 million in DP budget on some random dude I've never heard of who's really not that marketable. People love a homegrown player. Mm-hmm. Like, you're a Tampa Bay Rays fan. How much you guys love all those farm system guys that you bring up?
Well,
Willie Adames must be your boy.
Yeah, before all this stuff with the Astros cheating scandal stuff, I was a diehard Tampa Bay Rays fan. I'm not watching this year, like you know. Yeah. But it was, I mean, the difference between the MLS and the MLB is that the MLB, you can spend $200 million and not make the playoffs like the Red Sox. And if you're the Tampa Bay Rays, you can spend less than $60 million on your roster and generate talent if you have great coaching, which they did, and still make the playoffs. Yeah. But that wasn't really the case with the MLS in recent years, unfortunately.
Yes, and that...
So, like, with the Union, it took them forever to win a playoff.
And you guys are looking good.
Yeah, but, like, with the Rays, they existed in the league for 10 seasons as a small market team. They sucked the first 10 seasons, but then they finally made the World Series. They won the American League over the Boston Red Sox, who have, like, the largest market in baseball. Yeah. But that's a completely different story. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we are out of time right now. Thank you all very much for watching. We hope that we will be able to continue Shootout in the coming weeks, but unfortunately that may not come to fruition if we actually do wind up closing the school. Which is, according to my history teacher, a major talk. So in that sense, or in the event that happens, we thank you very much for watching Shootout this season, and hopefully we will be back in 3 weeks. Cool. See you all later.